Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 1.
It was supposed to be the best summer of their lives. A group of 10 teenagers from different towns had all signed up for Camp Pine Hollow, a remote summer camp nestled deep in the dense forests of northern Maine. The camp had a reputation for being rustic and adventurous, canoeing, hiking, campfires, and old cabins with creaky floors and peeling paint. But no one had told them about the darkness lurking just beyond the tree line. The first few days were typical camp fare, making friends, awkward crushes, whispered dares in the cabin, and late-night ghost stories around the fire. But something felt off. On the first night, Emily swore she heard footsteps outside her cabin, slow and deliberate, but when she looked out, there was only the thick blackness of the woods. The counselors brushed it off as animals or the wind, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching them. By the fourth night, strange things began to happen. Their group noticed that some of their things had been moved or were missing. A flashlight here, a jacket there, sometimes a shoe left by the edge of the woods. Then the whispers started, faint, unintelligible voices that seemed to float through the air when the wind picked up. At first, they thought it was a prank by other campers, but the camp was nearly empty this session, and the counselors were nowhere to be found after lights out. One night, Jake, the most skeptical of the group, decided to investigate. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped outside just as the moon disappeared behind thick clouds. The forest was eerily silent except for a soft, dragging noise coming from the direction of the old trail, the one no camper was supposed to take because it was off limits. Jake followed the sound deeper and deeper into the trees until he stumbled upon a clearing. In the center lay an old, rotting cabin that none of them had ever seen before. The door was slightly ajar, and inside, the air was thick with decay. Scattered on the floor were strange symbols drawn in ash, half-burned candles, and what looked like bones. Suddenly, a cold wind slammed the door shut behind him. Jake's flashlight flickered and died. He heard footsteps again, this time close, too close. Panicking, he smashed the window and sprinted back toward camp. The next morning, Jake was pale and silent. He refused to talk about what he saw, but the others knew something had changed. They found strange claw marks on the cabin walls and noticed the campfire circle had been rearranged overnight into a crude pattern that resembled a spiral. The whispers were louder now, sometimes sounding like a chant in a language none of them recognized. On the last night, the group decided to leave the camp before sunrise. As they packed in the dark, a sudden, unearthly howl ripped through the forest, freezing them in place. Shadows moved between the trees, tall, distorted figures with glowing eyes. The air grew heavy, suffocating, and every step toward the exit felt like wading through thick mud. They never made it out together. One by one, the shadows claimed them, dragging them into the woods, leaving behind only the echo of terrified screams. The next morning, search parties found the camp abandoned, with cabins empty and no sign of the missing teens, except for those strange claw marks etched into every door and window, and a single burned spiral drawn into the dirt at the center of the campfire circle. Camp Pine Hollow closed that summer and was never reopened. But every year, when the moon is hidden behind clouds, locals say you can still hear whispers drifting from the forest, and sometimes faint screams carried by the wind. Reminders that some horrors don't stay buried in the woods.
Story number 2.
Every summer, Camp Hollow Pines welcomed kids from all over the state. Tucked deep in the woods of northern Minnesota, it was the kind of place where the air always smelled like pine and dirt, and the lake was so still in the early mornings it looked like glass. For most, it was a place of childhood wonder, bonfires, and first crushes. But for Emma Collins, the summer of 2003 would haunt her forever. Emma was 15 and working her first summer as a junior counselor. She was excited, especially when she was assigned to Cabin 6, a small, slightly weather-worn cabin at the edge of the woods. It was farthest from the main lodge and closest to the trail that led into the dense forest, but Emma didn't mind. It gave her a little space from the chaos of camp life. Her first week passed uneventfully. The kids were rowdy but manageable, and the nights were filled with ghost stories and the distant sound of loons echoing across the lake. But as the second week rolled in, things started to feel wrong. At first, it was little things. One morning, Emma woke to find all the cabin doors wide open, even though she was sure she had locked them the night before. Then one of the kids in her cabin, little Jordan, began complaining about a man he saw standing at the edge of the woods at night. Emma assumed it was a camper's imagination running wild. But Jordan kept insisting, whispering, "He just watches. He never blinks." One night after lights out, Emma sat on the cabin steps, listening to the sounds of the forest. That's when she heard it, a snapping twig. Not like a squirrel or raccoon, heavier, deliberate. She stood up, peering into the trees. She saw nothing but darkness. But then came another sound, closer this time. A low, wet breathing, like someone who had just run a marathon and was struggling to catch their breath. Emma backed into the cabin, locking the door behind her. The kids were asleep, their tiny bodies sprawled across sleeping bags and bunk beds. She stood by the window, watching the woods. Then she saw it, a figure, tall and lanky, standing between two trees. It didn't move, didn't even sway, just stood there. She couldn't make out details, just the silhouette, arms too long, head slightly cocked to one side. She watched it for nearly 10 minutes before it finally turned and walked slowly back into the darkness. The next morning, she reported it to the camp director, but he waved it off, said it was probably an animal or another counselor playing a prank. Emma wasn't convinced. That night, the screaming started. One of the girls in her cabin, Lily, woke up crying, clutching her arm. When Emma turned on the lights, she saw 4 long scratches down Lily's forearm. Not deep, but angry looking. Lily swore she hadn't scratched herself, said something cold had grabbed her in her sleep. Emma barely slept. She kept the lights on and sat up with a flashlight, eyes flicking from the window to the door to the woods beyond. At 3:12 a.m., the lights flickered and went out. Then the cabin got cold, unnaturally cold, breath clouds in the air cold. The kids stirred, restless. Something was outside. Heavy footsteps circled the cabin, slow and deliberate. Emma held her breath, gripping the flashlight like a weapon. Then she heard the whispering. It wasn't in English. It didn't even sound human. Just low, guttural sounds sliding around the edges of speech. The doorknob rattled. Someone or something was trying to get in. Emma lunged for the door and braced her weight against it. The pressure stopped. For 5 long minutes, there was silence. Then a loud slam, like someone had thrown themselves against the wall of the cabin. The kids were awake now, huddled together, crying. By dawn, it was over. The camp director tried again to laugh it off, but Emma demanded to be moved. She was reassigned to Cabin 3, closer to the main lodge. Cabin 6 was given to another junior counselor named Brooke. 2 nights later, Brooke vanished. The kids said she had gone out to chase someone she thought she saw watching the cabin. They said she walked into the woods and never came back. A search party scoured the area. They found no sign of her, no footprints, no clothing, nothing. But they did find something else. Just outside Cabin 6, in the dirt behind the fire pit, they found a series of small handprints. Children's handprints, but distorted. Too many fingers that ended in long, pointed tips. They stretched all the way into the forest, then stopped. Camp Hollow Pines quietly shut down the next summer. Officially, it was due to budget cuts and low enrollment. But Emma knew better. She still dreams about that summer, about the breathing, the whispers, the figure in the trees. And sometimes she wakes up to find her bedroom window open, even though she always locks it.
Story number 3.
Every summer, Camp Waverly buzzed with laughter, splashes in the lake, and the crackle of nightly bonfires. It was the kind of place that promised innocence, rustic cabins, s'mores, ghost stories, and fireflies. But in 1997, one summer session ended so abruptly and so violently that the camp was permanently closed. Most people just chalked it up to a freak accident, a tragedy no one wanted to talk about. But the few who were there, who survived, tell a different story. Eric was 16, a junior counselor, and that summer was supposed to be his last. He'd grown up at Waverly. His best memories were here. The swimming dock, the rope bridge over the ravine, the old mess hall that creaked like it was alive. He had a younger group of boys in his charge, Rowan, Tyler, Ben, and little Jasper, who was always the quietest. The first week of camp was ordinary. Campfires, hikes, pranks between cabins, nothing unusual, except maybe the odd absence of animals. Eric noticed it first on a hike. No bird song, no chipmunks darting around. Even the mosquitoes seemed fewer. And every night around 3 a.m., something would wake him. A sound in the woods, low, guttural, dragging. The first night he told himself it was a deer. The second night he grabbed a flashlight, stepped outside, and saw nothing but mist rolling over the lake. The boys started complaining of nightmares. Jasper wet the bed twice, then stopped speaking altogether. Tyler said he saw someone standing in the woods watching them at night, just watching, not moving, not blinking. Rowan, usually the brave one, begged Eric to let them sleep in the same bunk. Then came the third week. That night is seared into Eric's brain like a scar. It was storming. Rain came down in sheets, and the counselors had gathered all the kids into the mess hall for safety. Around 11 p.m., the power went out. Just like that, darkness. A few kids screamed, others cried. Eric and two other counselors lit lanterns and tried to keep the kids calm. That's when they noticed Jasper was gone. Eric felt a sick twist in his gut. He knew how quiet Jasper could be, but something felt wrong, really wrong. He ran back to their cabin, checked under beds, in closets, nothing. Then he saw muddy footprints leading out the door, barefoot, small. He grabbed a flashlight and ran into the woods, heart hammering, calling Jasper's name over and over. The rain was cold and blinding. The beam of his flashlight flickered as thunder rumbled above. Trees groaned in the wind. And then he saw something that stopped him in his tracks. Jasper was standing perfectly still about 20 feet ahead, completely naked, his back turned. His skin was pale and wet. Eric called to him, but the boy didn't move. He stepped closer. "Jasper," he whispered. "You're okay, come here." Jasper slowly turned around. Eric staggered backward. The boy's eyes were pitch black, not like dark pupils, fully black. His mouth hung open, and from it poured a thick, dark liquid. It wasn't blood. It smelled like rust and rotting leaves. And then, behind Jasper, something began to rise from the earth. Eric said it didn't look human. It had no eyes, just a long, stretched face and limbs that bent in wrong directions. It moved like it didn't understand how bones worked. As it stepped forward, Jasper collapsed, limp, like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Eric ran. He doesn't remember how he made it back, only that he didn't stop screaming. By morning, Jasper was found at the base of the ravine. They said he must have wandered in the storm and fallen, but his body had no broken bones, just a look on his face like he died screaming. Camp was shut down the next day. No public explanation, no memorial service. The Waverly property was sold off, and to this day, no one's ever reopened it. Eric never went back. He refuses to talk about it now. Only once in a podcast interview from 2008 did he speak on record. He said, "That place was wrong. The land was wrong. We weren't alone out there. Something was feeding, using the kids. Jasper wasn't the first. He just didn't fight it as hard. I saw it. It wore his skin for a few minutes before it showed its real face. And I swear to you, I still hear it dragging itself across my floor some nights." That episode was pulled after 2 weeks. The host said the audio had corrupted, said Eric had gone off the grid. But every few years, as someone posts a picture online taken near the old Waverly Lake of a pale boy standing in the tree line, eyes too black, mouth open too wide, and always barefoot.